It's episode 7 of the Sick Esports podcast, a weekly podcast about the business of esports and the esports business.
This week, April 28th, we talk about the latest in Activision Blizzard news as the hits just keep coming.
Then we talk about the rest of the industry. Sony, Ubisoft, and Valve are all making plays in the live gaming space.
Then we close things off with a breakdown of Riot Games' most recent moves and talk about if they remain the industry leader in esports or not.
I'm Thomas TJ James, joined by Matthew Covey Samuelson, and all of that is after this.
Oh, breaking news? Okay.
I was just reading this news. I don't have a super good source. Maybe I'll put one in the show notes.
Okay.
But I'm just kind of putting this together from multiple different sources right now. And nobody has the full story because I do not believe this is supposed to be public.
Okay.
But industry reporting is saying that the Activision Blizzard Microsoft deal is on ice. And the UK regulator in specific, we talked about this previously, Activision Blizzard is trying to sell themselves to Microsoft. Sony, amongst others, are opposing this deal, saying that it would give Microsoft an unfair monopoly, and that acquisition is being investigated by American, European, and British regulators, and maybe Chinese regulators. I saw that, but I didn't follow that story. But it is the British regulators who industry reporting is saying are about to announce a hold on the deal, a stop on the deal, which would not necessarily stop the deal overall. It would complicate it in the UK, but it would make it incredibly difficult.
Okay. I find it funny when big businesses attack other big businesses for trying to make moves, right? Just the amount of lawyers that are involved in this. I think it's so much money being down the drain. You got to believe with how big this merger would have been if this were to be a thing.
But I was having this thought. When you have a friend and they're dating someone and you really hate them. And you like the friend, but every time you have to hang out with their shitty boyfriend/girlfriend, you're like, this isn't, you need to find someone else. And then they break up, and you're like, oh no, that's so bad. I'm so sorry for you. That's how I feel. That's terrible, Microsoft. Oh no, you're not going to get to work with Activision Blizzard anymore?
Oh no, the relationship didn't work out. Oh, what a crime. Oh no.
That means you're not going to have access to titles like Call of Duty and Overwatch?
Oh no, the Overwatch 2 heroes aren't a part of the Xbox Game Pass. Oh no. Too bad.
And literally nothing else because Activision doesn't make games? This is my big deal. I don't think Activision Blizzard are almost a holding company at this point. They don't put out games. They run maintenance on their major franchises. They put out new editions of those games. But
True.
There is nothing I have seen that has shown Call of Duty is getting more popular. They're being eaten alive in the multiplayer FPS space by free-to-play PC FPS. Overwatch was one of the things that ate them alive, but it's certainly not at the forefront of the multiplayer game space right now.
Hearthstone's still fine, but not growing.
Not growing. In fact, player numbers going down.
Yeah.
So I think Microsoft are gonna. This is what I would say to Microsoft if she were my friend and she just gone through a breakup. I would say, you know what, Microsoft? I think in 3 years you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, thank God it didn't work out. I think you're gonna get some perspective, Microsoft, and you're gonna realize that you're too good for him.
Yeah. I think the other thing with this, I wonder what Microsoft would have done with esports. Because I feel like Blizzard, one of the criticisms of Activision Blizzard is that they've really ran their esports titles into the ground over time.
Well, Microsoft tried to have their one major push into esports recently has been Halo.
Yeah.
And they partnered with Esports Engine to operate a Halo series and tournament. It was a series, it was an online series that culminated in major tournaments. Basically the same model as the Call of Duty League, and except it wasn't franchised, but they did have partner teams. And the viewership just wasn't there because Halo isn't hitting it with the kids. Halo is an older skewing game. So they didn't really make a splash. They didn't capture a new market. And it hasn't really worked out. And that's been the story for Microsoft overall, is they don't really have a handle on a younger audience right now. And I don't think Activision Blizzard were going to be the ones to sort that out for them.
Yeah.
There's been some conversation. Activision, Microsoft were some of the people pushing this, where they were like, well, the real reason we want the deal is actually because of King, because of Activision Blizzard. They're actually Activision Blizzard King. King are the makers of Candy Crush, and a whole bunch of other mobile games that make a lot of money. And so the Microsoft line has been, well, of course we'll get access to Call of Duty, but our real interest is in owning the mobile games market. And that's kind of interesting. I would be very curious to see if Microsoft continues to chase the mobile games market. But Candy Crush is not a younger skewing game either.
Yeah. That's like, mom and about to retire kind of game.
Which is a great segue into our next story. In this new section I'm calling Activision Blizzard News.
Ooh.
CC Young at Kotaku wrote an incredible write-up of this. And her title is, "This Mom Didn't Know She Was Winning an Esports Tournament," which I think is a great hook. And it's about a Midwestern mom in Columbus, Ohio, who works at her family's roofing company. And she, unbeknownst to her, she just tapped through some things and was entered into a leaderboard race in Candy Crush. And quickly became the top-ranked player in the semifinals.
Okay.
And I will read now from the article, quote, "Erin was overwhelmed, so she texted the other esports athlete in her family, her son. Zane was the best Meta Knight player in the Midwest at the height of his Super Smash Bros. Career. She asked him what a $2,500,000 prize pool was. After he explained that first place got half of that total prize pool, he asked why. She said, 'I'm in the semifinals, accidentally.'" And that led to Zane posting a tweet on Twitter that went viral and turned into this Kotaku story. Would you like to read that tweet? It's in our notes.
"My mom plays Candy Crush all the time for years now. Apparently, she accidentally entered an official Candy Crush tourney and had no idea what it was. She's in the semifinals and seeded number 1 in her region, which I believe is just 1 in USA. There is a $250K prize pool for the tourney." She was eliminated in semis. Bummer.
Well, yeah, that's a little sad, but it did. Yes, she was eliminated in the first. I think the pressure got to her. I think she didn't know she was in the tournament, so she was just grinding.
The bliss
she
was the power.
The tournament,
yeah,
got to her.
Yeah, there was power and bliss.
What a lovely story, though, and this is the potential. This is genuinely the reason why Activision Blizzard needs to be owned by Microsoft. Is that if you're going to put esports money somewhere, and this is what I've been saying for a while, Halo is not going to compete with the Call of Duty League, with the Overwatch League, with the LCS. All those different games have exactly the same market. You know where there's room for growth in the esports market? Moms that live in Columbus, Ohio and work in their family's roofing company. And if you can get them to be esports athletes and esports viewers, you'll build a viewership.
I mean, the most common gamer is 45 to 50-year-old mom, and that is honestly much thanks to Candy Crush.
Mm-hmm. Rounding up the rest of Activision Blizzard news, Chengdu Hunters, the Chengdu, China-based Overwatch League team, owned by a Twitch competitor essentially called Huya. That does them a huge disservice because Huya is frankly a much better website than Twitch, just technologically speaking, and they're also much bigger than Twitch. But they've been embroiled in some stuff because the Chengdu Hunters, of course, can't play Overwatch right now because Overwatch is not out in China, if you remember that.
Yeah.
They say, quote, "They are contemplating the future direction of their team following the Overwatch shutdown in China, and they were not included on the initially released league schedule." Do you make anything of that?
I mean, personally, this is just terrible from a league that one of your teams can't play because you can't publish the game in their country. That's brutal.
Which, if you remember, it was entirely their own screw up. Some reporting has come out that says the reason why that drama happened, the reason the deal with NetEase fell through, was because Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision Blizzard, really pissed off a NetEase executive, was kind of insulting, and NetEase just refused to renew.
I mean, okay. I mean, I think the other. I don't want to like skip over this news, but I think that the other piece of news about Overwatch League is just really just the icing on the cake for me, and how inept Activision Blizzard is.
Yeah. Go ahead and slam that through.
All right. So, Overwatch League, they had a big contract with YouTube as a part of the Activision Blizzard deal with YouTube, right? That contract is up. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how Call of Duty numbers have actually seen quite the boost because they're on Twitch now. Not Overwatch League though. They're just staying exclusively on YouTube with no deal announced and no sign of a deal being like there's like no leaks or anything. It's just only there. That is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's a little unclear why they are still broadcasting exclusively on YouTube. The Dextero story that broke this categorized fans as, quote, stumped, which I thought was very funny. Fans are stumped as Overwatch League stays exclusively on YouTube.
Yeah.
I will say YouTube is a better broadcasting platform than Twitch. However, if they're not paying you should be putting that stream everywhere you can. So the only reason they wouldn't be doing it is because they're holding out for Twitch to pay them. I know there was drama in their sister league, the Call of Duty League. They signed a non-exclusive YouTube deal, so it's possible that they're in some negotiations for something similar to that. And they're staying on YouTube as part of those negotiations is a good faith indication. But the way they got that non-exclusive deal with YouTube was they streamed on Twitch and their numbers went up. And they brought those numbers presumably back to YouTube and started negotiating. So it is interesting that Activision Blizzard are not doing the same thing with the Overwatch League.
That is mind-boggling to me. As, I mean, you set up, the developer set up a league where a geolocated team cannot compete anymore because you don't publish the game in their country. And then they set up a league where there's no broadcast deal and they only put it in one spot. That just sounds terrible. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
In Esports Winter / Activision Blizzard news, the CDL franchisee Version 1, owners of the Minnesota Rocker, as well as a Valorant team that bear the name Version 1, have announced that they are looking for a merger. So they're shutting down. If you wanted a glimpse at the state of CDL finances.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say, like, there has been some recent good news for COD League, right? Like, I think the viewership numbers are actually somewhat promising for them. Like, I do think that helps quite a bit. I just think, like, and also, I will say that, like, franchise slots are looking to sell in other games as well, right? As, like, it even is referenced in the article, right? That, like, NRG Esports and COG, or the Madison Square Garden Entertainment, like they had a deal / a merger. So I think the situation now is that MSG Entertainment, they have like they're a big shareholder in NRG, but NRG now owns their team, stuff like that. So COG, like that brand's dead, which is too bad for League fans, but still. Like it references like the franchise fees are too big, and of course the new approach that like Riot took with Overwatch is that there is no franchise teams. They actually give the teams a stipend to use their likeness for Valorant, and those are the teams in their league. That seems to be the model that things are going to go towards moving forward. And I think because that model now exists, we will see some divestment from these big franchise leagues.
You think there's going to be less major franchising stuff like that, more open tournaments?
Yeah, major franchising's dead. It can't work. It's not going to happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Doom and gloom. I want to touch on it's been a couple of weeks. I want to touch on the overall viewership for the last month. Maybe we can do that next time. I guess is the way to do it, because we can wrap both March and April in together. We can do that next week. But Overwatch, suffice to say, Overwatch League and Call of Duty League are just not competing at the big leagues, right? And you can say, oh, well, they're only on YouTube. But at the end of the day, if they don't have the viewership numbers, why would sponsors sign with them? Why would they be able to broadcast it the way they're doing? You know, there is some good news. There is one smart thing. I know this is just a section where we dunk on Activision Blizzard. There is one spot of good news in the Activision Blizzard wheelhouse, and that is that they just announced a partnership for a Call of Duty Mobile Esports League with ESL. And I think that's really smart. ESL have a ton of good infrastructure in Southeast Asia and India, where mobile games more broadly are very popular, and where Call of Duty Mobile in particular is very popular. So I think that that's actually a really good growth spot. However, Call of Duty Mobile is developed exclusively by Tencent's Teamy Studios, so I don't know how much Activision Blizzard can claim credit for it.
Go Riot. Yeah, Tencent. Woo. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be really, I'm glad the merger died, but I would be really curious to see a world where Microsoft inherits all these things and like what they do.
I like that we live in a world where they're going to have to do something else.
Yeah.
I like that we live in a world where if they want a piece of the live game market, where if Sony wants a always online free-to-play FPS, they need to make one that competes in the big leagues. They need to unseat Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Valorant, Dota. Like that is the market that the major studios have been late to. Activision, Microsoft, Sony had some piece of Destiny at a various point in time. Call of Duty is almost a big live game, but it isn't really because they release a new one every year. So yeah, I think that it is significant that neither Microsoft nor Sony, the two biggest console makers, nor Nintendo, who are part of that conversation, have a majorly successful multiplayer game on their platform. I think that is significant. Speaking of, you said you wanted to talk about this bit of Sony news.
Yeah, so Sony's planning on releasing a lot of games as they actually made an acquisition of Firewalk Studios. Apparently in the process of building an original AAA multiplayer game, which is curious. And between that and the other studios that they now own in their portfolio, they revealed in February that they plan to release more than 10 live service games in the next 4 years. So they said before March 2026. Rather ambitious. And because it's under the Sony portfolio, I would assume that those would be PlayStation exclusives for the most part.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a big problem that Sony is going to face, is that multiplayer games live and die by their player base, right? Multiplayer shooter. Let's use League of Legends as an example, right? League of Legends, every game, 5 people get matched against each other. It's basically working on the same principles as a dating app, right? It's like Tinder. Ultimately, there is an algorithm that looks at tremendous amounts of data about the people using the app, and it tries to match them together in such a way that they will have a good experience talking to each other for an hour. And the more people that are on that service, the better it's going to do with that. And conversely, once you start losing people, not only does it take longer to find good matches, but all of those matches are going to be lower quality for the entire player base, which is then, of course, going to result in more people leaving, etc. So you need to have... I was talking to a game developer the other day, and he said that based on their data, which based on their data, which was very believable given his pedigree, a multiplayer game needs to have at least 20,000 players to be sustainable over the long term. That's 20,000 concurrent players basically at all times. And if you're dipping below 20,000 concurrent online players at any time around the clock, then you're going to start to see that spiral where the matches get lower quality and so people leave, etc.
Okay.
So I don't know how you do that, because I don't think there are going to be 20,000 people logged on to their PlayStation playing the same game at any given time around the clock.
Yeah, I think that's a good point with like cross-platform. And of course, like...
You need PC players.
No matter what the game is, you're going to have complaints about queue times and quality of matches if it's any game that's supposed to be played at a non-casual level, right? That's just something that, like, I mean, people inherently will complain about for every game.
I mean, did you see the Pokemon Unite stuff? It doesn't matter if it's not meant to be played competitively. People care about the matches. That's the game.
Yeah.
It's like how social media... We're having this big conversation about like Twitter competitors, and it turns out that really the thing that social media is it's a moderation product. Your product is what is the experience you have on Twitter. And if the moderation gets worse, your experience on Twitter gets worse. It's the same for multiplayer games, where ultimately the product of a multiplayer game is, yes, the game, but the matchmaking algorithm is maybe the primary product. Because if you can guarantee that I'm going to log onto your game and have a good time for 5-20 minutes every time I log on, I'll play your game.
Yeah. I agree. I find that the 20K number interesting. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think the positives of this, though, we live in a world where developers want to put out a major title that they just consistently update, and that is their game, right? I think that's led to more devs focusing more on maintenance for the games that work and less so for very like creative new multiplayer games to exist. I will forever stand by and say some of the most fun I ever had gaming was when PUBG first came out. And that game was shitty, it was buggy, there were so many things wrong about it. You had to like honestly manipulate your play to play around the bugs, like jumping out of windows. Like you had to do like this like really like tightly knit like timed like multiple key like action to like get out consistently, and it was like tough to do every time. But god damn, that game was so fun to play with friends. And I really hope that like Sony, like if they are buying up these studios, I really hope the studios are trying to create something that's fun, that's new, that may take away, you know, people from the big games, because I always love like when disruptors come in and we get new games and they're a blast, right?
Well, we've also seen that, like with the Amazon studios. Do you remember all the Lumberjack engine games? Amazon, I think they've shuttered the studio now. But for about 5 years, they produced maybe 3 or 4 different full multiplayer game prototypes, soft launched them, didn't draw a big enough player base, and went back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
And they were really into data-driven focus testing, etc. And the lesson I took away from it is you cannot focus test a hit into existence. I think a lot of building a Valorant, a League of Legends scale game is marketing, and a lot of it is you just need a really good game that you can. And if what's the Henry Ford quote? If I ask people what they want, they just say they want faster horses.
Yeah.
You can't make an iteration if you want to take a slice of this market. You need to come up with something new, and then you need to market the hell out of it very savvily. And that's the only way you're going to pull anyone away from whatever they're playing now.
Yeah, I agree.
PUBG did, to your point. PUBG did a really good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, that was the first Battle Royale, like, at that scale. I mean, it was just a totally different game, like, unlike anything I've really played. So I think that was just super fun, and really fascinating when it came to that game.
And it's still, I was looking at this the other day, PUBG still holds the overall peak for players on Steam. No Steam game has ever had as many simultaneous players online as PUBG.
Which is crazy, given the numbers that CSGO is like still putting up. Like they recently like hit peaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Counter-Strike right now has around 1,100,000 players online. PUBG's all-time peak is 3 million concurrent players.
Oh my god, that game was so fun.
In the heyday when it was the first game to do something totally new, and it didn't even really work, but it had good marketing and it was a totally new game.
It was so fun.
It built a 3 million player concurrent peak.
It was so fun. Like you actually felt like it was like a battle royale, because like the sound was off, so like you like never knew like where shots were coming. Honestly, like it was like just kind of like a wasteland. You like go like scavenge for stuff. Like they're like different. The map was sweet. I don't know. I really love that game. Like it's a bit of nostalgia like at this point, but like I really did love that game.
Well, I will draw another learning from your reminiscing, which is that the other reason why you need to make a game broadly accessible is that games are social experience, right?
Yeah.
PUBG really hit because it was a really good game to play with friends.
Yeah.
And this is something that's missing when a lot of people make live service games right now designed for esports from the ground up. Is it's not fun to play with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend the other day talking about playing League of Legends with their friend group. And they were like, it actively makes us worse friends because we all just argue with each other about winning the whole time. And I was thinking about that and how you need to build something that I think people can compete in and get better at over time. Key part of building a sustainable live service game. Building something that someone can play with all their friends anywhere. Key part of building a sustainable live service game. Also needs to have really good marketing so that it breaks through people's current lifestyle habits of logging on to do their daily missions in Valorant, their one game of Call of Duty every day. You need to change their habits, and you need to do all of that while also building a game that is going to bring in a new audience, that does something new and interesting and can expand the audience so that you're not just pulling from other games, because you're never going to dislodge a big enough percentage. which is why like PUBG and Overwatch initially broke out, was because they did bring in new sections of gamers to the market. So a lot of challenges ahead for Sony, given the restrictions of they kind of only publish games on the PlayStation, which brings with it a very limited audience.
We are kind of assuming that based on the article. I mean, we don't know what the games will be in the next few years, but...
And there could be a shift in strategy there, because they have been publishing... I played their Spider-Man game on PC recently, and that is a PlayStation exclusive game that they eventually published on PC.
Yes. Yeah. That game's so fun.
Yeah. Shoutouts to Sony's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the other live service game that got announced? Item number 2 here.
Yeah, Tom Clancy's X-Defiant. So you said that you played it in beta last year, which is like what were your thoughts? I guess like first impressions of this.
Yeah. It's a Call of Duty, is what I would say about Tom Clancy's X-Defiant, which is a truly bad name. This is Ubisoft's attempt to tear away the Call of Duty market. It's a run and gun shooter. It's got fairly high time to kill, which means that people are very spongy, so it's very casual friendly. The secret sauce, if there is one, is that it's class based. So you pick a class that has different like health stats and abilities. Every character has a couple of abilities. So it's somewhere in the realm of like Overwatch and Call of Duty, somewhere in the middle. I don't think it has what it takes to really break out into the market, is what I would say.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate when new things are tried or done. I feel like all the Tom Clancy games for me, I've never been into the Tom Clancy games. I haven't.
You play Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege.
That's the only one. That is the only one. That I do love Siege. But like the rest, like, you know, like the turn-based.
You can play as the guy from Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege in Tom Clancy's X-Defiant.
Wait, you can?
Yeah, it's like a multiverse event from all the different Tom Clancy games. You can play as operators from all the different games.
Oh, man. Good for them, I guess. That's cool.
That's cool.
Good for them. I don't know. I feel like COD really can't be dislodged.
But also, and this was my question, increasingly, why would you want to compete in that space?
Yeah.
Because I don't think Call of Duty is a significant player in the multiplayer games market right now. Not that it doesn't have a significant audience, it does, but it doesn't have a growing audience. And I don't know those numbers for sure, but based on the numbers we do have access to, which is viewership on services like YouTube and Twitch, they are attracting a smaller and smaller audience every year, and that audience is skewing older. So I don't know why you would want to compete in that space. And based on what is happening with Tom Clancy's X-Defiant, the numbers that we have access to so far, they are kind of reaping the rewards you would expect. They're drawing in a fairly small audience. It is skewing older, and I don't think it's going to be a game we're talking about in a year.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's a game we're going to be talking about in a month. So, well,
but I would have said that a year ago, and then it came out a year later. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what they were doing for a year. I logged onto Twitch. I looked at some of the gameplay, and it's the same game. I don't know what happened.
Curious.
Do you want to talk about a live service game that is reinventing itself, that is appealing to a new audience?
Oh, is this Dota?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this I found fascinating as, you know, a coverer of MOBAs myself.
As a man who works on League of Legends for Riot Games.
We got there. So Dota put out a massive patch, quite literally and figuratively, as the patch makes the map 40% bigger, and the timing of the patch is right before Dream League, their group stage, and playoffs start. Like, they started a week ago, but the release of this patch, like, it is massive. Like, there are so many new mechanics. There are so many, like, they changed classes of heroes that they have. They removed items. Like, the map's 40% bigger. I know I said that once, but like, gee, can you just imagine, like, that's like one of the fun parts about a MOBA, you know, is like the map doesn't change.
Yeah.
And now they changed the map in the middle of the season.
Every MOBA map even the games like Paragon, like Smite, that are kind of like first-person MOBAs, every MOBA map looks roughly the same. It's the diamond with the 3 lanes.
Yeah.
So it's like they added more squares to chess. It's like messed up. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. But they made Dota 2's map bigger and changed basically everything about the game.
Yeah. There are like a bunch of new funky mechanics now. I don't know. This is fascinating. I mean, if you're gonna make a change like this, I always say like do it. Start of the season. I was complaining that Riot Games like this year they had their preseason patches changed nothing, and like the first 3 or 4 patches of the season changed like everything. And Riot is like, oh, we were on our 2-week mandated Christmas vacation that everyone in the company gets, so we just didn't like. I was like, what? Like,
you want to know what's fascinating here? This is actually exactly the same thing.
For real?
Yeah, Valve has like a Hawaii vacation they go on every year. And so they released the huge Counter-Strike update, went on vacation, did nothing to Counter-Strike for like a month.
Oh
came
my
back,
God.
completely relaunched Dota with no explanation. Like you say, right before a major stage of an ongoing tournament, which is very funny.
Yeah.
I want to cite some numbers though. Because basically, this game adds this update adds a ton of complexity to what is already widely regarded as the most complex ongoing multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Right? You could argue that StarCraft is more complex, but nobody plays StarCraft. It's an esport only at this point. It's not really a multiplayer game.
This is a team game, yeah.
Yeah, Dota 2 has a couple 100,000 players on Steam at all times. It is a active multiplayer game. And it just, with this patch, had a whole bunch of complexity added to it. Not like remade, like Fortnite adds a ton of complexity every season, but they delete all the old complexity. So it's like a resetting of the board, essentially, where you play Fortnite, you learn how to play Fortnite, and then every season they completely rebuild Fortnite, and everyone's on a level playing field again, which I think makes it more accessible to approach. Dota 2 is just adding mechanics on top of mechanics. They're just adding 40% more mechanics to the game.
Not only that, but like also like think of like, the core of like what goes into a MOBA, right? So a lot of this is like golden experience. Like how is that acquired? They changed all that. Like creeps scale harder now, and you get less gold for them over time. Kills are worth more early. And also they globally decrease the duration of disables.
I don't know what that means. I'm not enough of a nerd to know what that means.
So like stuns, roots, like anything that like, disables your champ, they decrease the duration of that across like almost every single one of the game.
It's
wild.
Pro stuns. I have this theory. People, this is like way too into the weeds. People in multiplayer games don't like when you can stun their character and stop it from moving. So people are always like, there need to be fewer. Dota apparently classifies them as disables, but this happened in Overwatch, this happened in League of Legends. People are always like, there need to be fewer stuns. It's not fun to get stunned, to not be able to move my character. Yep. Here's what I will say. Good. It's not supposed to be fun. You got stunned. And whenever you create a version of the game that doesn't have stuns, your game entirely becomes about DPS. It becomes about doing damage. You lose a dimension of the game. And this happened to Overwatch. This happened to League of Legends, where they removed or lowered stuns to such an extent that the game went completely out of whack and became entirely about doing DPS.
I think that League actually has a nice balance of...
I haven't played in a year, but...
I think that like where like the stuns and like the disables and durations are, nothing's over like 2 seconds. Everything's usually around like 1.5.
If you step into my jungle and I'm playing a tank character, I should be able to stun you for a minute. I should be able to stop you from moving. And maybe I can't kill you, but give me that other option. Give me another dimension to play in where I go, okay, if I stun you, you now can't do things on the map.
Yeah.
Let me push other buttons.
I don't know.
Anyway, that's a digression.
I mean, like Dota, like their durations were way longer than League. Like I think
their digression, their stunts would like actually last
like
a minute.
5 seconds, which is a minute in this type of game.
I want to loop this back around though, because there's been an ongoing conversation about League of Legends and how hard it is for people to pick up League of Legends. kind of this thing that happens to ongoing multiplayer games over any period of time where more and more features are added, and at some point, can anyone even pick up the game for the first time?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a pop quiz. What do you think happened to player numbers after they released this massive update that changed everything and made it shinier and prettier?
I'm gonna go up 10%.
It's about right.
Yeah.
But kind of not really. Player numbers a week on from this update are basically where they were before.
Okay.
500,000, 600,000 players peak. It wouldn't be entirely fair for me to say they're exactly the same. There's been a slight uptick, couple 100,000 more at the downtime.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing with like these big patches is like, because these games are so complicated, these are the types of games where like people, they have their main game they play and then they play others, but they have a main game they play, right? So when a patch comes out like this and it's this monumental and big, people like that play that game, they're like, oh, I got to try this out, right? So you're always going to see an uptick. Yeah, that's.
But it didn't bring in new players. Is my point. It didn't bring in any new players.
No,
there's no evidence that League of Legends players saw this and went, oh, I'm going to try Dota. They added a whole bunch of features, which is what you would expect. If I go to the store and there's two kinds of toilet paper and one of them has a sticker on it that says 40% bigger, new features, I might try that toilet paper, even if it's not the brand of toilet paper I usually get.
That's true.
Right? Don't say that's true like that's a good example. Dota 2 added a whole bunch of features.
Good example.
And did not draw a significant chunk of player base away from a competitor.
Yeah, but like these patches like aren't made to take things away from a competitor. It's made to keep the player base they have going. And I talked about actually like I was on Hotline League this week, which is one of the bigger podcasts ran by Travis Gafford and Mark C. Involving League of Legends. They take callers. And before we took callers, we actually talked a lot about the dev space because and I went on to say like I feel like for these games like esports specifically, you have to get the 18-year-old demographic to play your game. And if your game's too complicated, then you're cooked. And the reason why like it's 18 to 24 is that's the best demographic for sponsors that sponsor this game or like sponsor esports. Because that's when you're going to get all the kids that are for the first time getting car insurance, credit card, banks, cars, all that. And if you get one of those customers as one of those orgs, the odds of you having a customer for a long time or a customer for life are very high compared to a lot of other industries because the switching cost is so high in those industries. And so, yeah, it's like a true barrier when your game's too difficult to pick up because then you don't get new young kids. I picked up this game when I was in high school. It'd be way harder to pick up now when it's in high school, especially given how figured out it is now. There's a lot more resources for you to learn, but still you have to put in the time and effort for that. Yeah, Fortnite, they got it right. Unironically, they got it right.
So League of Legends should delete all of their complexity, half of their champions, and just relaunch next season?
No, but they need to... See, that takes away the beauty of the game. But you need to find as many ways as possible to bridge that gap. As the game developer, you can't expect people to like go to YouTube or Google and just be like, how do I play or build this champion? Like, what is the best here, right? You need to make those resources available in client and have a client that's much more supportive for a new player. Have like a legitimate onboarding process too for this game because they don't. Yeah, it's tough, but like it is a big thing to fight.
I was going to save this. Do you want to talk about LCS audiences?
Sure. Fire away.
The LCS audience has continued to drop over this season.
Yep.
There was a forecasted downturn in viewers because it's at a worse time now. They moved it for BCT.
Yep.
However, it has not just continued to... It has continued to decline over the course of this season. It has not built back up. Yeah, let me send you a copy of this.
Yeah, so yeah, like the viewership was expected to drop given that they put it on weekdays. Riot themselves admitted that when they had the finals was a mistake because they put it on Easter Sunday, which I don't think the overlap between Christianity and gaming is the highest, but still it's going to take some viewers away.
Well, I mean, when your audience is as old as League of Legends.
Oh, true.
That's the dads at Easter Sunday.
True.
You know what I mean?
Everyone went to the finals in their Sunday best, I'm sure, you know?
Yeah. I've sent you the link in our team's chat.
I mean, at the least, it is a weekend where like a lot of people do travel to go home. So
yeah, so that's if you go halfway down, if you go halfway down this article on esports charts, I will put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
You can see the finals kind of year on year. And basically every single year viewership has gone down, but every single year viewership has built up over the course of this season, except for this year, where viewership has held throughout the season and then, in fact, as you said, dropped towards the final. And I would posit this represents a failure of the broadcast, because you can say what you want about the time of the broadcast and, whatever. You can say what you want about not bringing in new viewers because the game's too complicated.
Yeah.
Whatever. But if you have a certain number of viewers in the middle of the season and then that line goes down over the course of the season, that must indicate that things are going wrong, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of skimming through this article. I think that I do think that the broadcast actually had a good split. Personally, I think they did some good things. Like they actually did try a lot of things out of the box.
Disclosure: you do work on the broadcast.
Yeah, I do, and I have a good working relationship with a lot of people on that broadcast too. But I also
they're great people, very talented people.
Yeah.
Should say that.
Yeah, I also think that like they tried a lot of things that like went. I think that some of those things turned up really good for them. This split. I still think that there are like some systemic issues with how they cover bad teams. And I think that like one of the areas of this article is like honestly like my hypothesis as to like why viewership has dropped. It has nothing to do with the popular teams. It has everything to do with the players. Fans of esports do not follow teams. They follow players. They want to latch on to personalities like that. Yeah, some people will have favorite teams, but at every point of that favorite team, their favorite player who has ever played their game will have been on that team. I almost guarantee you that. And I think that like the failure to build up the new generation of people that like will take that mantle, and also kind of like how gaming has evolved and gotten almost too corporate, so you lose that grassroots level of connection that people have with the original pros. Like everyone still references Sneaky Meteos, Double Dift, and Bjergsen, right? Back then, esports was much smaller, and like they streamed a bunch. You had a grassroots connection with them. I feel like that's kind of like been the charm of esports in that sense, especially in the League of Legends space, has been missing. And I think the failure to build up the next generation of players that will take that mantle is actually what's hurting viewership more. Because we are the fourth best region in the world. So if you are not watching LCS to watch the most competitive League of Legends in the world. And I think that them failing to lean into that and failing to build up the personalities still, because they're like, oh, we can't build them up because then they'll lose. It's like, well, it's still the league and someone has to win the league, right? I think that's what's really hurt LCS in the long haul.
Yeah, and I've really struggled with this for a long time. Kind of in response to this and a Jacob Wolf article. There was a Jacob Wolf article that went out on his jacobwolf.report, and I didn't bother to link it because I think it's a mostly bad take, and it is mostly just a take. But he's like, the esports winter is even crushing Riot Games, and the LCS is a shadow of what it once was. And so both the viewership numbers and the Jacob Wolf story came out, and so Riot Games put out a blog where they were like, we're still committed to esports. And there was in the midst of that blog a little note where they were like, the number one reason people watch esports is to get better at video games. And this is what our survey says. And
the survey said that?
Well, that's what their survey said. I would say, of course their survey said that, for a combination of, one, that is the product that Riot Games produces, is a very, like, you're going to get better at the game by watching this broadcast. That's what they're constantly telling you when you watch their broadcast. And two, that's the reason why everyone says they're watching the broadcast. But as a creative leader at Riot Games, and I don't recall the exact executive who wrote the blog post, but as a creative leader at Riot Games, that should be a 9-alarm fire. You should want to change that. Because the analogy I have is if you did a survey at Disney World, if Disneyland did a survey, and they found that 9 out of 10 of their guests said they were going to Disney World for the food, something's wrong. Because all the money's on the rides. Sure, they might like the food. It's good they're liking the food.
Yeah.
But if your rides aren't connecting with your audience, if the stories you are telling about the players aren't connecting with your audience,
yeah,
there is something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, and nobody has ever tuned into the NFL to get better at football. Nobody does that except for like pro football players, but nobody does that.
Yeah.
People tune into the NFL because they care about the NFL and they want to know their favorite teams. I watch and listen to baseball regularly, at least weekly. I don't do it because I have any dreams of playing baseball.
Yeah.
And the Riot Games article is like, well, that's just how the audience is different. No, you have a self-selecting narrow audience that is engaging in your product because they want to get better at the game. Think of how much broader your audience could be if you were able to draw people in for other reasons, is what I would say.
I mean, I FaceTimed my friends yesterday during the NFL draft, like when the Bears made their pick, right? I
have never FaceTimed anyone during the NFL draft, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Bears sweatpants still. You know, there was just we got a couple new players. Like that's like exciting. Like that's like part of like the entertainment factor of just, yeah.
And on a good day, that is what the LCS really brings.
It's what it could be. The advantage
of the franchise system is that you get the like scoops from the players behind the scenes, and this player's going to this team, and people love that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of a professional embarrassment at it. No, that's the stuff. That's the product. Commit.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's just like still a lot of like missed opportunities, and I also know that like the budget of the show, it's not like it's going up or has gone up. And that does make things harder. But I feel like Riot just doesn't know what esports is to them still.
Yeah, I think that
they view it as like it needs to be profitable as it like on its own. They don't view the value of like what is the marketing dollars? Like how much value is it for Riot Games when Bjergsen plays like a Freljord Talia skin? Like how many people like go in and buy the skin because they saw their favorite player like play that champion on the, like, or how like there haven't even been enough activations in the client to be like, hey, if I buy an emote for my favorite team, like how many people will do this and support esports this way, right? Like we can kick some money back to the orgs and we make money too. Like the failure to monetize things, and we can use this to like transition into the virtual pass, but it's really given teams a headache. And I'm not saying that the teams are innocent in this either, because I feel like teams have struggled to monetize as well. They've had a very narrow scope with how they view like what they can do, and it's really tough to monetize fandom. But it's like for a game that's been around for 13 years and a league that's been around for 10, like this is the 11th year of the league, the failure to do basic things like this is just, it's inexcusable at this point.
Well, I think there was a time in esports where there was such a narrow audience that it was only the very narrow audience of nerds that were playing League of Legends that were going to watch esports, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the economics of scale have reached esports, and the creative production side of esports has not reacted to them. And we're still broadcasting to that audience of nerds by and large.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to afford the big shiny stage, you've got to broaden the pot. You've got to make a show that is watchable.
Yeah.
By a larger swath of the population.
Yeah.
To your point, we have one more story here from the Riot Games averse.
Yes.
You understand this way better than me.
Yeah, the virtual pass. So you're going to be able to buy a virtual pass, which is actually going to include physical products, which I think is wild. They want to like do experiential features, like digital collectibles, maybe. I don't know. And
this is from Riot Esports. Is it on the League of Legends Esports website, or is it in the client somewhere?
I am not sure, and not yet, because this is about Worlds. Like it's a while out. They're just announcing they're going to do it.
They're only doing it for Worlds. They're not doing it for regional.
Yeah, no, they made a very corporate-y post where they said nothing. Fun. It is fun times. Anyway, they're going to try to like. They're trying to use the pass to create a revenue stream for teams. I don't know how it's going to work. They just said they're going to do it. I don't know. Like they see, like this is the thing. Like Riot's like, oh, we're all in on esports. Like, where was this when like the teams were originally franchised? If this is the case, right? Like this seems like such a shoe-in that so many other games have done to their client. Like, why is this 5 years late? It's really frustrating for me because like I talking like all like like these teams struggling. Like they're likely like going to cut Challengers League teams. Like they won't be required next year.
That's the AA farm system.
Yeah. So like seeing Riot be like, oh, like we're still like all in, like we're like gonna find ways like make teams more money. Like teams are really struggling and hurting right now, and I don't think the teams have helped themselves, but also I can't say that like Riot's helped them a bunch either, right? And that's
also
kind of frustrating.
It seems very backwards to me that they're doing this internationally, because the teams that make Worlds are the ones that are doing all right for money.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right.
You're giving money to the New York Yankees. You're not giving money to the teams that need money.
Yeah, and I can tell
you, the teams
you,
that need money can't afford the players or the system to make the international finals.
Yeah, and I can say like what Riot wants is like they want their regional leagues to be profitable. And if the regional leagues aren't profitable, like they've cut some in the past couple of years. Like the Oceanic region doesn't exist anymore. Like they have something, but Riot like doesn't incorporate them in like their major events, which sucks. But Riot wants their leagues to be profitable. And I think that only doing this at the international stage doesn't help those leagues be profitable. So yeah, I don't know. The potential of this is big. You will get, I like, Riot will do like events in the client where if you buy a pass, you get like a bunch of like tokens that you can use to spend on like drops for skins and stuff, pretty much like rolling. I like that. Like that was actually motivation for me because I have to play this game in sprints now because I don't play during the season. It's just dumb for me to play. It's better for me to like watch tape, and then if I need to figure anything out, I can just go into practice tool, or I can just ping a pro player. Like, hey, how do you play this, right? It is, the passes are like actual motivation for me to play the game. Like I always buy the Worlds passes because a little bit goes to the prize pool, and like then I get stuff out of it. Seeing like having a more aggressive pass that like more money goes to the teams. Again, where was this 5 years ago? Where is this for your regional leagues? Like I want to support my league and my favorite teams, and I really feel like I don't have the ability to do so. And I'm a caster of the Dev League. Like I can like go to like the event and like, you know, like I can go to LCS. Like I went quite a bit this year, and like I can go like have fun. I can go chit chat.
CLG players at 20.
Yeah, I mean I gave them fist bumps after they won, you know. But like that's like I have like no way to like monetarily support the team unless I buy merch. Like it, and I feel like if this is a franchise league, like the NFL has a fucking shop on their like website, right? NFLshop.com. Like I can just go like buy whatever gear I want. Like I can go straight to the website.
Do you want to know something fascinating?
What's up?
Fanatics, the company that operates shop.nfl.com or whatever, also
they work with
operates
Activision Blizzard.
the Overwatch League and Call of Duty shops.
I knew that.
And everyone hates them. But
yes,
my point is,
it's there.
Their merch is low quality. But my point is that when the Overwatch League had to sell to team owners from traditional sports, because that's where a whole bunch of the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League team owners came from.
Yeah.
Because they own traditional sports teams.
Yeah.
The first question they said is, okay, what's going on with the merchandising?
Yeah.
And that just hasn't existed. They've also had, Overwatch, for all we clown on it, has had a revenue stream in-game. They've had passes that you pay for to get skins in your team's colors, so you can essentially wear their jerseys in-game.
Yes. Or stuff like that. Like
they have that for
stickers,
Call of Duty as well.
Emotes, like anything, you know?
Yeah. Counter-Strike has a system where you can buy stickers with your team's logos on them and put them on your in-game weapons.
Yep.
You can also buy individual players' signatures, and all that money then goes directly to the individual player.
Riot did that they do that only for the teams that win Worlds, which is cool. Because like the players get to design the recall animations of their skins, which can be really fun sometimes. And I do love that tradition of whoever wins Worlds gets skins in the game. I think that's badass. But where are smaller ways to support teams that, as you pointed out, are the regional teams that may not be the ones winning all the time?
Yeah. They
need to be profitable too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. And it's really frustrating for me because like Riot's always so far behind on these things. And like they just get beat out by other game devs on things that like seem simple. But like they have other big projects they're tackling. They have other games to manage now. And they're a smart company, but they don't really know what esports is to them still. And I feel like that's really hurt their games.
Do you think, and this is a conversation we should return to,
yeah,
for a very long time, Riot Games was the industry leader in esports.
Yes.
Do you think they still are?
Yes. Like when talking with orgs with Valorant, everyone was like, it's a Riot esport, it's a no-brainer, it's gonna work. Like there was like no concerns of like what was going on with like Overwatch League. Like, you know, Overwatch was like dying at the time. They're like, oh, it's Valorant, like it's gonna work. That's why a lot of players swapped over. I still think.
And I will note, version 1 has a Valorant team going out of business.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. Like, obviously, Riot is stumbling. We've been very critical of their work in North America more broadly, but also of specifically their work on the VCT main broadcasts, of their work to maintain the League of Legends ecosystem recently. I think they have made a lot of mistakes, but the people nipping at their heels are even further behind. I think Counter-Strike is close. I think Counter-Strike via ESL is very close, but that's like an ecosystem.
I love CS.
Right?
Yeah.
There are franchise leagues in Counter-Strike, but they're owned by tournament operators. They're not owned by Valve, by the game developer.
Yeah.
That's the Blast ecosystem and the ESL ecosystem, and it's like wrestling, right? You have the two promotions, and then once 4 times a year, the big events happen, and all the teams from the two promotions play in the same event. And honestly, it's sick to casually follow. That's really fun. But kind of nobody else is in the esports game right now. You have Valve with Counter-Strike, and then all the other developers that are doing esports are much further behind than Riot or Valve.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's an hour and then some on the clock.
Yeah, a little bit of a rant against Rito, but I feel like some of it's it's what it is.
I'm always like, I don't want to say anything because I know you get paid by them, and then you come in here and just drop a 20-minute diatribe.
Yeah, I don't know. I really struggle with this one.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. You know what I will say? Yet another instance of Riot Games dropping the ball. I will say this. I was playing Valorant the other day, and I met one of the developers who I worked with on League of Legends Wild Rift.
Oh.
I met him at a couple of events. I just randomly ended up in a Valorant game with him. He went like 3-15.
Oh, you didn't get the gun buddy?
Absolutely terrible performance. Kind of cost us the game, to be honest.
Oh, no.
And I was really nice to him, but here on this podcast, I will admit I was disappointed in Riot Games.
Bummer.
Yet another instance of Riot dropping the ball.
Didn't even get a gun buddy out of it.
Oh, you're right. I could have asked for that. I'm so bad with skins. Valorant skins are crazy. They're like $70 actual for a gun.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Like the cheapest Valorant skins are like 15 real human dollars.
Okay.
And
Curious.
if you want like the full pack they release, it's like 200. They're priced like sneakers, dude. It's crazy. Anyway, you can find new episodes each week at sickesports.com, as well as the podcast provider of your choice. Matthew Cubby Samuelson is still on Twitter at CubbyXX. Are you getting on Blue Sky, Mastodon?
Oh, I actually had I made a Mastodon account when Elon took over. But
what's your Mastodon?
I couldn't tell you. I've been on since. I made that and then the Hive. It's
right, on Hive.
Yeah, it's smart. It's someone where social media in their career, it's somewhat important to them to just snag your tag, right?
You can find Cubby at CubbyXX on Tumblr, on TikTok.
I'm on none of these websites.
On Liveblog.
Hi, I'm Cubby on Reddit. Yeah? Huh?
Oh, okay. All right. You can find me. I'm not on any social media at esportstj.com. Be safe, be kind to yourself, and get paid what you're worth.